Well, hi guys, Pastor Andy Ferguson here, back again with Biblical Politics. So today we're going to be further discussing Referendum 90, the Washington State Legislature that was approved by our voters for comprehensive sex education in the school system. And with me today is my friend Daniel Sutton. And Daniel is passionate about political issues, and he and I often have great conversations, and so I thought it'd be good to just invite him into the studio today and just kind of talk about these issues and see if we can't kind of mix it up a little bit and cover the pros and cons and the back and forth. So Daniel, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I am going to college for business stuff. I've got a long history of being a sort of liberal. I guess I have a lot of liberal ideologies. I've just recently turned more conservative and stuff like that as I become more aware of Jesus' teaching and that sort of thing and stuff. So I'm going to take the side of coming at it from sort of a liberal perspective, and just he'll respond to me as more of a pastoral perspective, and then we'll discuss different points of views and things like that, and how the Referendum 90 sort of affects kids and teachers and society as a whole.
One of the objections that people have is just that maybe people haven't understood it properly, and so you showed me something there that shows that an 11-year-old has an assignment to go find a place where they sell condoms, and then has to take a picture of it and bring it back as part of their homework. I mean, that to me, is just so offensive as a parent and grandparent and somebody who, holds a biblical worldview. So, I mean, that's one thing. I don't know if you have any comment about that, and it kind of goes on into other areas, and it's just the explicit nature of the curriculum just seems so over the top.
Yeah, definitely. I know I posted this on my Facebook, and I got some criticism from some people saying that, like, this sort of pamphlet or whatever is not accurate, and so we went and did some research and to see, and it says right here which curriculum it comes from and that sort of thing. So when we go to their website, as you can see at the top there, let's see what they say about their curriculum exactly, and I know it's here somewhere. Okay, here we go. View the curriculum. We can take a look at the kindergarten. You can see right here. You can choose the kindergarten, and sort of lets us. It lets us choose. Oh wow! I mean, it has everything on here. That's pretty crazy. Let's just not pick one. I wonder if we can just download the whole thing here. And when you look at that pamphlet over here, it says kindergarten through second grade, 5 to 7 years old. The vagina has great elasticity and can adjust to the size of the what. And they've said that is not accurate, and so we can find out if that's on their curriculum or not. And it's right here in their curriculum, so that's interesting. The what has great what, and you guys can read that yourself. So yeah, so this is kindergarten, guys. This is pretty nuts. And
kindergarten, 5-year-olds learning about body parts and their sexual usages. Again, I just think that's a dangerous and slippery slope. But let's tell me about the argument that you had, or the argument that is presented, as to why. What's the justification? Let's assume a good intention. What's the justification for people presenting this and thinking that this is important as a law?
Yeah. So when I posted this on my Facebook, I got some feedback from my liberal friends, and they said things like, that basically, where else are these children going to learn about this sort of thing if not from school? and that our current system and the way it's working right now is not working very well because obviously, we have mass teen pregnancies and abortion and STDs, and basically their argument is that kids grow up completely ignorant to the discussion of sex education and things. And so basically, I think that what do you think the solution is?
Well, yeah, and that's a good point, and I don't want to deny, the fact that there's a lot of, dysfunction in our society, and so, I have to give them that, but it's like so many other things in terms of issues in our society. When we see something that's wrong, like we welfare or, child abuse or whatever, we create laws then to govern the extreme that are now put on the whole. And that to me is the government overreach and the out of bounds. It also doesn't speak to, is it government's role to do these things? And so, I think that's one of the underlying issues at stake here is, the government stepping into what is, commonly and forever been understood to be a parental role and responsibility. And I think as Christians, we need to ask ourselves, where are we at with this, and are we, prepared to take responsibility for, these issues? Because obviously somewhere along the road we made some, society as a whole has gone off track, and so I think that's what's being ignored here is the fact that we have some problems, and so the liberal or this response is, well, government and the system need to be, stepping in and the answer. And we don't want, your religious views on this. We're going to give you our ideas. And so that's where the problem is we, yes, we have problems, but the idea that we're going to surrender, the responsibility of solving that problem to the government and to the system is a big part of where I have concerns and where I don't believe that that's, spoken of biblically in terms of the parents having the right. Like I said, in Ephesians 6, Paul says that it's the parents that should train their children up in the instruction and admonition of the Lord. And, up until 100 years ago or less, parents understood that it was their responsibility. And it's interesting because they talk about, I forgot the word that you used, but kind of a social consciousness that influences morality, that they're trying to, create a social awareness or a greater societal awareness about issues in order to prevent teen pregnancy and all these kind of things by educating kids about that. That's what the idea. We had that. We had that up to 100 years ago or less, right? Where the society as a community had a common morality. Mm-hmm. We understood that sex outside of marriage was wrong. We understood that, single parent homes weren't healthy for communities and that children weren't meant to be raised in single parent homes and things like that. And so the church was responsible for teaching that. And again, you go back through society, and particularly in a Christian, society like America was for 200 years, where morality was commonly understood and it was based on biblical virtues and morality, mm-hmm. right? And in that society, every measurement of dysfunction that they're now talking about was way down. According to statistics that I read, illegitimate children's birth rates 100 years ago was 5%. Now it's 40%. And so we say we are now addressing a problem, but the problem occurred, from my perspective, because we've departed from the morality and the ethics of a Christian-based culture. And now we're trying to come back and put on the system to bring in their morality, which I don't believe is going to support what they're seeking.
Yeah, so the government's sort of taken the role of God and of the parents.
Yes, exactly.
Just like welfare and like all the other programs that they're
exactly
big government.
It's an overkill, and again, I believe that you break the law of consequences when you take responsibility for something away from the individual and the local area and pull it up to some huge umbrella organization and then try to force feed it back down. I think morality and responsibility, mutual responsibility in community with other people is the way that we are intended to raise, our kids, our families, and things like that. The problem is that we can't anymore find common ground, and so now we have to have this heavy-handed government approach that says, well, you'll do what we say. The problem is it's not biblical and it's not commonly held, so you have Big Brother enforcing its ideas on everybody as individuals. And it's just not going to work.
And I think another one of their sort of justifications or reasons for, and I know that this has been really controversial with Christians and this sort of topic, is that starting from such a young age. What do you think? Where do you think it's appropriate to start teaching, I guess, kids about this sort of thing?
I'm going to be honest. This is a real dilemma now because of the proliferation of pornography and sexuality in media. I mean, when I was growing up, we all, understood that the birds and the bees discussion needed to happen, and it was part of, the coming of age, in a person's life and in their family. And so, the mom and dad and, everybody laughs about who has to have the conversation, and nobody wants to. And unfortunately, we've made it even more comfortable and more awkward because we haven't addressed it in a real mature fashion, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with talking about body parts with your kids, right? And the idea that we've made it that is absurd. And so, in some ways, I understand, why some people might think that, a Christian mindset, that it's almost like a Victorian mindset, some people would call it, like, well, we don't talk about that.
Yeah, like it's taboo.
It's taboo. That's really dysfunctional. So I just want to throw that under the bus right now.
Yeah.
No. We need to be able to have, honest and open conversations with our children and with adults about these things. I mean, I'm a marriage counselor, and Daniel will testify. It's like, when we need to talk about sex, I'm sorry, because sex is one of the main things about marriage, and if it's not working well, it can really harm the marriage. And so, this idea of taboo, especially within Christian circles where we don't talk about it, but if you go to the bar and you're talking about it with your girlfriends, you're always talking about it.
Yeah.
So why can't Christians be real about these things? I mean, that's an absurdity and it's something we really need to correct. But bringing it back to the home, I mean, parents really, really, really need to get a hold of this and just have those conversations. But here's where I was going earlier, and that is this issue of the proliferation of pornography and sexual media is like threw a bomb on this whole thing, right? I mean, I heard somebody today earlier talking, about their 10-year-old boy, they're being discovered with pornography downloaded on his phone.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that is like, I mean, that boy will never be the same.
Yeah. The accessibility that kids have to pornography is crazy to me. They have more access to pornography than they do,
biblical stuff.
Yeah, seriously.
No, we've got kids in our after-school program. We have boys in our after-school program that are 8 or 9 years old. I don't even know if they're that old, who have brought their phones to our church, and we're looking at porn. I mean, that's the problem. So you have kids looking at this stuff, wondering what it is,
and learning about it.
Their friends are all talking about it, and so you have to address it. And so from that perspective, I'm actually sympathetic to the intention, giving it the benefit of the doubt, to the intention of this referendum. I am, my friends. If that was your intention, then I'm with you. Okay, we have a problem in our society, and that is sexual promiscuity, and information is all over the place. And if we're not talking about it, the kids are going to find out in some dysfunctional way, and that's going to lead to greater problems. Okay, you got me on that one. All right,
yeah.
I agree with that.
And they say, it says on their website that it's evidence-based practice, and that basically they found that there are less teen pregnancies, and there are less STDs and less sexual acts actually altogether, just because, well, they say that teaching kids from a young age of basically what parents should be teaching their kids, like we were just saying.
Yeah, and so the whole idea of a parent deciding when their kid learns about sex education, I think, has caught a lot of parents off guard. I mean, we're living in a day, based on that exposure to pornography we're talking about, we're living in a day that's just blowing everybody's minds in terms of like, what do we do with this problem? Because I think for most parents to discover that their 8-year-old boy or 9 or 10-year-old boy and or girl, because it's happening with girls too, is looking at X-rated pornography. I mean, they're seeing people in the sex act. That's got to blow parents' minds. Of course, most parents are not innocent anymore either, but still, the destruction of innocence in a child is just an awful thing. And when you're a parent, I think it's just particularly disheartening. And so, that's a whole nother, bag of worms here. But yeah, I agree. We've got to deal with the problem, but I think we've got to take it back to the parents, and we got to take it back to the church. And the problem is, again, I think from this perspective, is that society as a whole has said, well, we don't want God in this, right? We don't want God. We want, we want to figure it out ourselves and have our morality, which is based on promiscuity. It's like, well, people should be able to do what they want when they want, as long as they're, both wanting it and so on and so forth. And that is undermining, I think, a lot of what could be, positive about this. And again, remember that the church had this role, in society for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so there was a common social fabric and understanding about these issues. But because God got pushed out of the schools and church got pushed out of society, now there's no morality being taught. And there's no morality necessarily being taught with this either. We're talking biological facts, but we're taking morality out of it. So who's going to control the moral discussion? And I think that's what's important even as we talk about, the biological issues.
Yeah. I want to talk about the parts of this that discuss homosexuality and their gender identity, gender roles, transgenderism and all that sort of stuff, and the damage that it's doing to our kids, really. And we see it. We have the data, and it says that, the LGBTQ community has a higher, suicide rate. They have, they're more susceptible to mental illness and their, depression and all this sort of stuff. And I know, like that. A lot of people, they want to say, well, it's because they're targeted by the right and like really hateful people, Christians and things like that. That the reason why they have such a high suicide rate is because they're bullied and all this sort of stuff. And I just want to point out that they have a higher suicide rate than the Jews did in concentration camps. So it couldn't be related to the way that they are treated. It's definitely deeper than that. I think it's because what you were saying, that a sort of confusion in identity. They don't know who they are, and I think that's one of the things that.
Well, it's also let's not make it even a homosexuality issue for a moment. Okay, I mean, I can tell you again, as a pastor and a counselor, people who have multiple sexual partners struggle with self-esteem, identity. They struggle with shame and guilt. They don't feel loved because they have an awful lot of rejection in their life. Sexuality was meant to be in terms of love and the expression of love in sexuality was meant to be a bonding experience where people of commitment and care and love and concern for each other share that. And in the sharing of that, there's closeness, there's affection, there's gentleness, there's caressing, there's a lot of endorphins and so forth that come in, and it bonds people together. That was the intention of sex for marriage in terms of sexual relations. And so the problem is, again, that when we take it and we basically make it a biological thing, because that, when you think about it, this is all comes down to, you got the body parts, and if you want to use them however you want to use them, hey, go ahead. I mean, if you can do it, do it, and if it feels good, do it. And which is a really animalistic perspective, right? Where we're not any different than animals. And if you believe in the evolution and that we are nothing more than, complicated mechanisms or organisms that have evolved over millions of years, and we are just here, then, I've got no argument, do it, right? Because there is no morality.
Right.
But if not, and if I'm right, if the Bible is right, that there's a God who created us a certain way, then, it's wrong because it's not according to the owner's manual. And when it comes to love, I want to get back to this point. when it comes to love and it comes to sexuality, when you are experiencing multiple sexual partners and you have rejection in that, which you will, I guarantee it. I mean, yeah, you might be young and having fun for a while and, in the free-flowing lifestyle of just saying it, but eventually, you want somebody who is going to want to be with you and want to care for you and truly love you. And that expression of sexual pleasure and love and embrace for each other is meant to consolidate that. But when you've shared that with dozens of people, and or you can't share that like you have, but that person's not interested, it will affect your psyche. It will affect your self-esteem, and it will cause you to be depressed. So it's not just that it's homosexuals that are experiencing this. The fact that we have our promiscuity, like everybody's having sex all over the place, is contributing to teen depression and suicide, because they're experiencing sex at a young age. They don't have the maturity to deal with it, number one. And they give themselves away, and then the person rejects them and goes on to the next person, the next person, the next person. And we are dealing with shame and depression and rejection. It's just beating up the human psyche in a huge way. And now when you get to homosexuality, now you have all the other issues on top of that. So I don't want to make it just a homosexual issue, but when you add the issues of shame and confusion and whatever, whether it's internal or external.
It's just sexual sin in general.
Yeah,
Does this.
Right. But when you add the complexities of homosexuality, transgenderism, and all that kind of stuff on top of the rejection, now it's magnified. See, so a homosexual person who's experiencing multiple partners and that rejection, all that good stuff, is got more of that depression and things than even a promiscuous heterosexual person, because they've got all the beat down, like I say, whether it's internal or external. And so it's just people. I know this will offend some people, but I know enough people who experience this lifestyle that it's the people that I know, they're not happy. And like I said, you can go on highs for a while and you can feel good in the act. You can, enjoy what you're doing, but the day after, not happy. All right. So, and I know that there's got to be exceptions, and of course that, people, they want to do what they want to do, but God's plan is the best plan. And if we'll just go by His ways, we'll all be happier. So, what you got?
I want to talk about, I want to take it from a teacher's point of view now, because I know some teachers out there are probably not very happy about this referendum, either specifically ones of religious background. I just want to talk about how the government's sort of violating the rights of teachers by forcing them to teach something that is, blatantly goes against their religion, right? You're teaching about homosexuality, transgenderism, and all of this sort of stuff, and even reading some of the curriculum, it sort of normalizes sex outside of marriage, even. And I just what do you think about?
Well, again, as I've said before, I think there's a whole other agenda behind this thing. I accept and said, before that there are some people who I believe have a legitimate, concern for kids, figuring things out on their own and being, taken advantage of in the process. Okay, so I will grant that, but that's based on the whole dysfunctional approach that we talked about, the whole dysfunction of society, where the church is absent and parents are absent and so on and so forth. So in that situation, maybe the better thing is for somebody's got to tell them. Okay, but now what you're talking about is you're talking about a whole nother agenda. You see, you're not just talking about helping kids figure out their body parts.
Right, like there's an underneath agenda here.
Yeah, and right. So
a more satanic one.
Right, and that's where the religious, issues I think really become, a concern, because, if I had to get used to, talking to kids about their body parts, and I knew that the whole perspective was from a heterosexual, biological gender orientation, I could do that. Right, I could do that. Mm-hmm. I would have some struggles with the age appropriateness for the different things that are being said.
Yeah.
But now, if you're asking me to teach the normalcy of homosexuality, transgenderism, and experimentation, bisexual, experimentation, which happens, right? And types of, physical interaction, such as, forgive me, but anal sex and things like that are specifically prohibited in the scriptures. Now I have a problem, because now you're asking me to present this to kids of a totally inappropriate age, not only, just their body parts and, sexual education.
But you're leading them astray.
We're leading them down a path and actually encouraging them to, experiment or be open to these ideas.
Yeah, and to question the Bible completely.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, why are you guys telling me this at church when my teacher said this, though?
Right, and so it's a complete violation of, people's faith and their ability to determine for themselves, what they want to believe about these things. And make no mistake about it, my friends. I mean, this whole sexuality agenda is a spiritual agenda. And that's one of the things that the devil has been successful in convincing a lot of people, is that somehow this is a neutral conversation.
Yeah.
That we're just talking biology here. So why are you bringing religion into it?
Mm-hmm.
No, my friends. This represents a different religion. And, as I said on a separate episode, the Bible historically talks about gods and gods of sexuality. All the ancient religions have gods dedicated to sex. Okay, and so the devil wants to get people trapped in perverted sexuality, and this is the way that he does it. And when it normalizes it in society, then it just goes rampant. And the real sad thing is that within this is so much victimization and abuse. All right, because you're just like creating a thinner barrier between right and wrong, and what the good guys are doing and what the bad guys are doing. Because we know there's pedophile rings, we know there's child abuse things going on, we know there's satanic sacrifice going on. And when we normalize all this other behavior, believe me, we are just making that veil between the reality that we think we're living in and that other dark reality very, very thin. And we're inviting it in to our common space. And my friends, mark my words, that's true. And the Bible speaks to it. If you really listen and what it says, it's scary and it's bad, and there are demons behind this. So make no mistake, my friends, it is not a neutral issue. It is a deeply spiritual issue, and we need to approach it from a biblical perspective.
So I see some lawsuits happening in the future, I think. I mean, get me if I'm wrong, but if schools really do start to force teachers or attempt to force teachers, and they're not buying it, what are they going to do? Are they going to fire them? Or are they going to? Yeah, I mean, you can't fire somebody based on not practicing their religion, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if it was you or somebody else who said, I think the goal of the left, and this is not giving them the benefit of the doubt, but I think the goal of the left is to get rid of Christian teachers. Because they want carte blanche to be able to indoctrinate kids, to socialism and, perversion of sexuality and, all kinds of things that I think that we would find offensive as biblical Christians. And so it's just, cracking the door open further and further. And remember, the devil's desire is to degrade humanity and bring us down and put us under oppression. So whether that's by, drug abuse, sexual addictions and drinking, or there's so many ways that the devil tries to oppress mankind, and this is just one more.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to fight up against this. I mean, push back for sure. But I think what was really important that what we said was that I think churches really need, and parents really need to take responsibility and more sort of normalize this sort of discussion, because I think it is the failure of the church that has sort of implemented this or allowed this to happen. The sort of making talk of sex and body parts and things like that taboo in the church. And I mean, you can pretty much ask anybody. It's part of the reason why I think a lot of people think that Christians are weird, is that you couldn't even imagine what a sexual relationship as a Christian would even look like, because of just how taboo the idea of sex is in the Christian religion. And so I think it's really good for us to say that we sort of encourage churches to talk to their congregation about this and to sort of normalize this, because I mean, look what it's doing. You got curious kids sort of teaching themselves with their friends and this sort of thing, and it's really yeah. And obviously, the government trying to take responsibility of the parents is not good in any circumstance ever. So, or taking the place of God is bad. So.
Right. Again. So, final word is that we believe God is our creator. He is our redeemer. He can heal things, and so if any of these issues have occurred in your life or somebody else's life that God can help you heal these things. He created us. He can heal us, but He also is the ultimate judge, and so we will all answer to Him for what we've done and who we've chosen to be. But He loves us, and He wants us to be with Him in eternity. And so just want to encourage you to open your heart to Him and listen to what He has to say. And that's why we're here from Biblical Politics. So
that's right. If you guys want to watch a previous episode, click right here. If you guys want to subscribe, click here. Feel free to like, comment, hit the bell if you want to get some notifications from us anytime we go live or upload another video. And we will see you next time.